Today is Tuesday, May the 12th, 2009. I look back on my career, which spans, I suppose, 38 years. And back in 1971 and 72, I was the president of a conservative constituency association for a time. And I was involved quite heavily in the Conservative Party. And looking back on it, thinking to myself, would it have been possible to make more of a difference if I had stayed within the Conservative Party and endeavored to effect change from within the system as Canada was? Well, realistically, with the benefit of 38 years of hindsight, I've come to the conclusion that it would have been impossible. Instead of changing Ottawa or changing the system would have changed me, and I would have become one of those people who sees nothing wrong with today's political corruption. And that conclusion is reinforced when I look at the story about the Karl-Heinz Schreiber inquiry, which, by the way, has been limited so that nothing really scandalous will ever come out. And Karl-Heinz Schreiber will be ridiculed and made to look like a fool, rather than face the fact that the evidence is fairly strong. For instance, and I'm quoting now from A6 of the National Post, Mr. Schreiber, and this is the result of Mr. Whitlaw's evidence. Interesting hummingbirds all around me here today. Mr. Whitlaw, who I gather is a forensic accountant of some sort, says that Schreiber reportedly received a $20 million commission in 1988 following the sale of 34 Airbus planes to Air Canada, which was then a Crown corporation. There is a, quote, strong inference, close quote, that this money was used to pay Mr. Mulroney, although he likely did not know the source of the cash. There's no doubt he received cash, either $200,000 or $300,000. Mr. Whitlaw testified. The Airbus deal itself was the subject of a previous RCMP investigation. No charges were laid, but public allegations that Mr. Mulroney received a kickback prompted him to file a lawsuit against the federal government. He eventually received a $2.1 million settlement. This seems to me to reaffirm, in my mind at least, there's Angus, my dog. You may wonder who is making those funny sounds. Well, that's Angus the dog, who's wandering around. And the hummingbirds over my head. The nice thing about nature is that it helps you to overcome some of the cynicism of facing reality as it is in the political world. But when I see that he received, that is Mulroney received, $2.1 million of public money, I realize that I'm glad that I never became part of the Canadian establishment, because apparently that's not a problem for Mr. Mulroney, and the RCMP couldn't find the evidence, just like they couldn't find the evidence of who's at fault in Robert Chikansky's taser death at the airport. It all smells to me so bad that I'm very grateful that in the 38 years that I've stood for Western Canadian independence, I was never part of the Canadian establishment. And maybe I've sacrificed a lot. Maybe I could have been a lot of things, a cabinet minister, a judge, or any of those wonderful perks that the system establishes. Maybe even a prime minister like Mr. Harper, who in my opinion sold out Western Canada to get to be prime minister. But once again, I'm glad that I stood for the principle that we have to free the West and build a country free from corruption, free from patronage and bribery, free from bilingualism and all the multi-fascist, multicultural mess that Ottawa has become. And when I look at what is coming out in the Schreiber inquiry and what will ultimately not be done about it all, I realize that I'm, as I say before, grateful that I never joined and never became part of the Canadian establishment. I may not have been able to change it, but at least I didn't join in it. And the result is I'm grateful to say today, as I have since 1974, free the West.